we are 1 week from Thanksgiving. JD here, good to have you on board. Your 6'3" ATM of Informacion loaded up, ready to be accessed. The PIN 800-876-4123. On the program where intellectual anarchy is encouraged and nurtured for now. Jesse producing the program for us today, as always. Mike, it's thrown me. I usually go to Don next, but you have that shocking blue dress shirt on 2 days in a row with a shirt and tie. I asked Mike why the tie 2 days in a row didn't go well in court yesterday. He said, no, not at all. He just was a day early. You, sir, are no Michael Jackson. You didn't have to go on the high-speed trail to get over to the court. You were a day early. That should give you bonus points for whatever reason you're there for. Don producing, working the dials. Mike screening the calls in a suit. Yes, blue is good. That's a good color on you, blue. I violated all tenets of responsible camera work. I have on a white T-shirt, which kind of blows out the colors and makes you look bigger. Not that the Hindenburg himself here needs any help in looking like someone stuck an air hose in my butt. Swelled me up.
Is that what that is?
And there is no truth to the rumor that I will be afloat in the Macy's Day Parade. Fifth Avenue in New York City. Is New York City still there, by the way? From watching Hannity's program last night, my understanding was that it was going to be destroyed today.
Smoldering pile of rubble by this morning, but it was going to be a
smoldering... right, exactly. Somebody was going to bring down Lower Manhattan. Okay, yeah, there you go. I guess they're there. Thousands are trying to shut down Wall Street. I was listening to some of the commentary today about the showdown, the dawn of Zuccotti, as they're calling it, Zuccotti Park. And it was supposed to be just ruinous. And today they were talking about how they're just standing in the way of people that just want to get to work so they can toil away at their desks and work their fingers to the bone.
Smelly hippies.
And raise their and just get their paychecks so they can raise their families and feed their dogs and put roofs over their heads. And they're standing in the way of capitalism and freedom and apple pie. Oh, where's my football? Okie dokie. I would have to say the thing I agree with regard to what the knock is on the protesters as to where they're protesting. You definitely do need to keep an eye on Wall Street because there's a lot of crooks there. But you also need to keep an eye on the crony capitalists, and you need to keep an eye on Congress. I went through today and looked at the top 10 stock holdings of our United States Congress, the 10 favorite stocks of Congress. And I'm not suggesting that this should be your portfolio, but you got to figure if Congress has its skin in the game, if they've got their money on the line, it's not fantasy poker or it's not one of those fantasy investment portfolios that you can put together. Here's the 10 from 10 to 1. Exxon, AT&T, Wells Fargo, Intel, Pfizer, Cisco, Microsoft, B of A, the third largest holding, Procter & Gamble, the second largest holding, and the number one holding by the most members of Congress, of which I believe there were about, 75 or 80 or so members of Congress invested in General Electric. They've got about $12 million invested in General Electric. The number two investor in General Electric is trash can head himself, John Kerry, the Democrat from Massachusetts. And the number one invested member of Congress in General Election, that evil, greedy corporation that makes all that money, doesn't pay any taxes. You see those Democrats, socialists, and Obama's economic advisors, and he sits there and he talks about jobs, is the Republican Darrell Issa from California with somewhere between $1 and $5 million invested in General Electric. So I'm not exactly sure if these are prudent investment decisions for you to make for yourself, but chances are that Congress wouldn't put their money where they weren't putting their votes, and that coming at the behest of the lobbyists who tell them what they want done, which is the way it works for them, but not for you and I. You see, if we wanted to do something, what's the old saying? It's easier to get forgiveness than permission. Well, that's kind of how it works when you're an insider. That's kind of how it works in crony capitalism. The capitalism we got under Bush and the socialism we're getting under Obama, because both parties are equally guilty. The Democrats more so now because why? They're in power. And the Republicans more so when the Republicans were in power. They get done what they want to get done at the behest of who wants to get it done and how much money they're willing to pay. And that's how the game is played. But it's you. If you or I wanted to do something, you would say, okay, I'm going to get an opinion letter on this. You write to the Internal Revenue Service and say, I'm thinking about buying this property for these reasons. I've been told the accumulated depreciation or the accelerated depreciation or this equipment purchase, according to my understanding of the statute, is, and I can take a 100% write-off, blah, 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 blah. And then you get a letter back from the IRS that says, in our opinion, based upon the information that you have provided us with, yes, that does, in fact, qualify for a certain tax deduction, credit, or whatever the case may be. So you and I, we tend to go, okay, would it be okay if I did this? Would it be legal if I did this? Would it be right if I did this? Obviously being a question of what your morality is with business principles overriding, I think for most of us, most of those decisions that would be made for financial reasons. But that's not how it works when you're a member of Congress. That's not how it works when you're a big corporation. They have so many people on the payroll. They've bought so many people. They own so many people. They control so many people that they basically just go in and say, this is what we just did. Now make sure we're covered. Wouldn't that be nice? It's a nice way to do business. You don't have to worry about the rules. You're not constrained by the rules. You don't have to worry about the rules, and you don't have to worry about the consequences, because what consequences? Last night I was having a conversation with some people about the consequences and who pays for what ends up being our reality. Now think about this. There's a couple of things I want you to roll around in that very capable mind of yours. 3.5% of mortgages are in default, but yet the entire financial international banking system is being brought to its knees. Has been and is yet once again. 3.5% of mortgages. It was a housing bubble that caused the economic meltdown. So 3.5% of our entire $11 trillion residential real estate mortgage market brought the financial markets to its knees domestically and internationally. How's that possible? Let's go to the next step. So housing's in the toilet. Okay, you could say, well, that was a one-off. It's just housing. But what else is in the toilet? Social Security, Medicare, the Postal Service, Amtrak. I mean, we could go down a list. And last night we clicked off about 25 different things, big things, important things, consequential things that are all going wrong at exactly the same time. What's the chances of you having 10 kids and having all 10 of them end up in the principal's office on the same day? You got to figure that maybe there'd be one or two that would go, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play follow the leader. But we got major institutions. We've got major agencies, major programs that are all in the toilet at exactly the same time, and not just kind of like in a little bit of trouble. We're talking about big trouble. We're talking about like end of the program if we were real about the accounting kind of realities. Social Security, for all intents and purposes, is bust. It doesn't exist. On anybody's books would Social Security be something that you would want to see. And the only reason it's not carried as a current liability is because Congress can raise, decrease, or eliminate your Social Security payment at any time. So they don't consider that to be a liability, a current liability, a liability that gets put on the books. We don't even have wars on the books. We don't even bother to put the cost of wars on the books because that's an off-budget item. That's a one-time item. That's a one-off. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya. Who knows what next we're going to be doing and where we're going to be doing it, but I have a funny feeling it's going to be in the China Sea, somewhere in the South Pacific, somewhere near Indonesia, somewhere we're now setting our military up to protect the assets of the crony capitalists who are investing in their financial future, that our military will be there to guard. Social Security, Medicare. The Federal Reserve Bank. The Federal Reserve. Sounds good, right? Federal Reserve. That gives you confidence, doesn't it? Well, here's where that's at right now. Now, when the banking businesses started going bad, they started playing their games. And by the way, we're now getting more and more confirmation that there's $600 trillion worth of derivatives out there. $600 trillion worth of derivatives. Stuff that was made up, non-insurance insurance, bets that were made, bookies that were passing money back and forth, which is what we, the taxpayers, are paying off. The leverage ratios on Wall Street used to be 14-1. The former Treasury Secretary, still current crook, Shifty Paulson, Bush's guy, went to the SEC and said, we need to get rid of that collar, that restriction. It's holding us back. Capitalism is being constrained. We need to kind of let the horse run at its own pace down the back stretch. And, of course, they said yes, because he's a Goldman guy, and Bush's advisor was a Goldman guy, and everybody who regulates was a Goldman guy, and it's all Wall Street Goldman connections. So they said 14-1, holding back the economy, let's let her rip. So rip they did. 14-1 went to 20-1, 25-1, 30-1. And at 30-1, when it all started coming undone, it came undone rather quickly. Now, you would have to say, in light of the Lehman collapse, in light of the MF Global collapse, you would have to say that there would be people, adults in the room, who would be saying, this isn't going to work out anymore. We can't do this anymore. And we, the adults, have to set the tone. We have to show you that these are the rules that we're going to live by. Now, the Federal Reserve is leveraged 51-1. 51-1. Right now. If there's a 2% drop in the Velvet Elvises and the dogs playing poker pictures that are pledged as collateral against the $2.7 trillion that the Fed has printed out of thin air and only has $58 billion in reserves to back up. If there's a 2% drop in the value of that portfolio, the Fed is in exactly the same position that the banks were. And the banks, by the way, my friends, are no better off than they were in 2008. Because right now, we're on the cusp of them looking to institute their fail-safe mechanism when they can't print the money anymore. They're going to institute the provisions in the credit default swaps, the $600 trillion, that's going to be used as an insurance policy to pay the claims on when the underlying assets go bust. The only problem is, with the credit default swaps, the insurance contracts that were written as insurance contracts, there's no insurance there. It's a non-insurance insurance with no reserves to back up the promises and the pledges that were made on the $600 trillion that's supposed to go to pay off the bad bets that they made on the toxic assets, the mortgage-backed securities that were used and sold and packaged and sent to institutions that go to make cash flow available to pay your pension plan that people have stopped paying. And now we're coming to find out that we're in about $500 billion in commitments to bailing out the European banks. $500 billion that's supposed to be backed by the insurance of this $600 trillion in derivatives that isn't there. That's the reality of where we're at. And it's all happening at the same time. How is that possible? That it's all happening at the same time. In an otherwise healthy economy, you say, we'll be able to take care of Social Security. In an otherwise healthy environment, you say, well, don't worry, we'll take care of the post office. Don't worry, we'll get the Fed to get serious about what they need to do. We'll be able to bail out Medicare. We'll figure out something. But everything across the board is going kerflooey at the same time. Why?
The Jerry Doyle Show.
Now, here's the bigger question. Can it be fixed? Because the financial scandals and scams and cheating that took place overseas, over there, that we don't see every day, it's already brought down 4 governments. Is ours next? 800-876-4123.
The Jerry Doyle Show.